Hello, good afternoon, good night, good morning to you all. Prophet Derek Gooden, Senior Spirit and Truth Ministries. I rarely do two videos in a week, but as I was finished doing the dishes today and I did my worship this morning, as I began to go sit down to relax, God put in my heart to give a message on Black Lives Matter. And, you know, in our country right now, there's a lot of civil unrest. Understandably so. Understandably so. And we may not agree with the way that people are protesting. People express their emotions in many different ways, you know. And people are just fed up. Black people are really just fed up. You know, if you take the whole thing in perspective relating to this country, you know, starting from slavery, black people have really been mistreated badly in this country, disrespected. I'm not even counting about the slaves that died. What about the slaves that were on the ships that had to be thrown overboard that's in the bottom of the ocean, that was left there to rot in the ocean? How many of those people was thrown overboard? Did anybody ever get a count of that? So I'm pretty sure we lost more than what we have on record to this day of black lives that was lost during slavery and segregation. We don't know if the countless of thousands, probably tens of thousands of slaves that was thrown overboard or died on the ships from diseases and had to be thrown overboard. Or some was just thrown overboard because of the mistreatment and the cruelty of white slave masters. You know, today we still see the same things going on in different forms. Police brutality, employment opportunities, and other areas in life, financial or social injustice between the races. But let me explain something to you. Black lives matter. And one of the things as a prophet of God, God just don't use his prophets to speak to the church. He uses his prophets to speak to those in the world as well. God's prophets are God's prophets. And being a prophet of God, a lot of times we are charged with saying the things that are not popular. I mean, it has cost prophets their lives in biblical days. In so many ways they suffer. But again, this job is not for the faint of heart. This area of ministry of being a true prophet of God is not for the faint of heart. It's not. So, we know what happened to George Floyd. That was unnecessary. And the young lady that was sitting in her apartment, when they kicked the door open and shot her up because they're doing the drug bust and they got the wrong place, wrong information, and the other Ahmaud Arbery, there was and countless of blacks that was viciously tormented, pain inflicted on them by white police officers. You go to job interviews and you look at the job market and blacks are being pushed to the side. Black lives matter, man. They really do. And this is something that has been sweltering and has burst out and bloomed because the seeds of this hatred was sown from the beginning of the foundation of this country. So that seed of discrimination and hatred was already sown. And when a seed of evil is sown, or the wrong seed is sown, or even a good seed, the seed has to grow and bear fruit. And sin is only getting worse and worse and worse. Racism has never went anywhere. And one of the things about being a prophet of God when you're a true prophet of God. You don't see things with tunnel visions. Because if you're looking at things from God's perspective, and God is giving you a view, and to look at things from his perspective through his eyes, and you hear as God hears, and seeing what God is seeing, and oh boy, look out. Black lives matter, America. Black lives matter, black people. Black lives matter, white people, and every other race that's in this country. But now we're going to look at it this way, from God's point of view. What about blacks that are inflicting crime on each other? What's the difference between that? Or what case would any one of us would be able to make to God when you say, you know what, God? And God was to ask you, well, you guys kill each other up. And we'll go to that, but God, he's a police officer. Racism, crime, murder is murder to God. Murder is murder to God. Shedding of innocent blood is murder is murder. Whether a black person do it to the next or a white person do it to a black person because of racial reasons. It doesn't matter the reason. The thing is innocent blood. That's what God is looking at. God didn't say, make a difference or make a difference between a white man that would kill a black man or a black man that would kill a black man because of their race. God looked at it as shedding innocent blood. We in this country get all riled up when somebody from another race uses the N-word. But yet and still our young people, even our older people, a good bit, use the N-word. It doesn't matter how we use the N-word when one black person is referring to another black person. The N-word is the N-word and it carries the same meaning. It doesn't change its meaning. It's the spirit of what it means. You could dress murder up. You could dress racism up. You could dress any negative and evil spirit up and make it look beautiful. But when you look behind it, it's still a spirit of murder. We rape and abuse our own women. We dishonor our parents. Our children go to school in low-income neighborhoods cursing out teachers and doing all kinds of disgusting things. Then you turn around and you meet some of the parents and you see where it comes from. We have to learn to respect and love one another. We don't even show true unity amongst ourselves because there's always someone envious that they're not getting nothing out of the pie. We just don't know how to help one another just to see a person get ahead. And I'm talking about as a whole. I'm not saying that there's no black Americans that don't try to help their own. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as a whole, because as a whole, if we was doing that, we wouldn't have the problems we have in our own race. I give you an example. Our black Americans in this country spend trillions of dollars at some of the biggest and well-known companies. And here we have black designers, people that are developing kingdom companies, and we wouldn't even support that. If we do get something from them, we are going to want a discount. But we wouldn't go into Gucci or Timberland and ask them for a discount, or Louis Vuitton. And there are designers out here. There are designers that the material of their leather is of a higher quality than Gucci. Not stiff like Louis Vuitton, not all hard like Michael Kors. Cuff Design is such a company. We have companies that are on the cusp of coming forward like G Square, which is a Kingdom company, that make quality t-shirts where the thread count is so high, you will buy a shirt from Ralph Lauren Polo t-shirt, and that shirt will stretch out way before one of G Square shirts stretch out. But we want a discount. But we'll go spend $25 for a Ralph Lauren Polo t-shirt and the collar's hanging down by your chest. Or Coach sneakers where the rubber is not made so good and the rubber wears down. We can buy a Coach and Nike, but we don't even want to support our own up and coming. And there's many companies like Cuff Design, black-owned companies, like Cuff Design and G Square, that can use support and that make even better quality of product. In my opinion, that will outlast Gucci because you're only paying for the name. So am I saying that am I advocating for separation of races? No. I'm talking about first loving, your own. Showing love and piety at home. Jesus says, how could you love a man? How could you love God who you've never seen, but you can't even love your neighbor? And so I said to you black people, how could you love God or anybody else and you can't even love within your own race? Love doesn't have any limits. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, there is no stipulation with God's love when you love in God's way. When you help or give somebody, why you always got to look for something in return? If you're a person that like to give and then look for something in return or expect something in return, you're not loving God's way. And that's why you would never probably have what you really could have or what God wants you to have because of that attitude. We kill each other. We got gangs shooting each other up. Gangs. Shooting each other up, killing each other. You can't tell God, but and we're committing crimes against other races, but we commit them against ourselves. And we want people to respect us, we have to learn to respect ourselves. And if they don't respect us, at least we respect ourselves and love one another and support our businesses. Trillions of dollars. And then you're saying that the unemployment number is hard out here. It's hard. We know it's hard. It is very hard. But we still have greater opportunity to succeed than they did during slavery and during segregation. And all those slaves that died, and all those people that fought in segregation for our freedom so we can have racial equality and opportunity at everything, most of them probably turning over in their grave right now. My Aunt Rosa Parks, my great Aunt Rosa Parks, probably turning over in her grave too. Martin Luther King probably turning over in his grave. Because we are squandering the opportunities that they gave their life for. And the first thing we want to do is blame it or say because of slavery is why we do this. But God wouldn't see it that way. God does not see it that way. Did anybody from another race make you go and cuss your mother out? Black youth. Did anybody from another race make you go and sell drugs? Just because somebody put it in front of you doesn't mean we have to do it. Did anybody make you go to school and just come up with poor grades and not study? Is anybody telling you to wear your pants below from another race? Anybody telling you to wear your pants below your butt? I don't care what any one of us say. We could never take this to God and try to justify. Because this is what God is going to point out. If you go to Genesis chapter 3, and this is where this principle comes from, and this is how God allows me to see it, and this is what God opened my eyes to see. In the garden, Adam and Eve committed a sin. Eve was the one that the enemy talked to, and she gave to her husband standing with her. So now God comes to fellowship. Go read Genesis chapter 3. With Adam, and Adam hid himself. God knew he hid himself. So God knew the reason why he hid himself. And when he approached Adam about it, he approached Adam about it. The first thing Adam did was say, the woman that you gave me this to eat. I'm going to turn there so you can see it. Then you're going to see the point I'm making and what God wants us to see. And he said in verse 11, chapter 3, when God questioned me, and he says, who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? Look at what Adam's response was. And the man said, being Adam, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Now he goes to Eve. Right? When he goes to Eve, and the Lord God said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? Look what she do. And the woman says, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And God deals with the serpent. But if you read down further, God is a God who's just. God dealt with Eve for what she did. God dealt with Adam for what he did. And he dealt with the serpent for what they did. The part that they played in it. So when it comes to Black Lives Matter, that's how God is going to deal with this whole thing. He's going to deal with the white cops and those in positions of authority that are white, Americans that are inflicting this racial and social injustice on black Americans. But he's going to look at the black race and he's going to deal with us, for those of us that kill our mothers, dishonor our mothers and fathers, our daughters walking around with their pants all up, showing their private parts, the boys walking with having their belts on, their pants hanging below their belt, the crimes that they're inflicting, gangs shooting one another, the shedding of innocent blood. That's how God is going to deal with black Americans. That's how God judges things. God is a God of just. He's just. Charity starts at home and then spreads abroad. Where is the charity? We're not talking about a few people like LeBron James that pour back into his community where he comes from. He genuinely cares. I'm talking about as a whole, as black people, we don't even support our own leaders. We don't even support our own businesses. And even in our churches, they're taking advantage of the members of their congregation with these seed faith offerings and these credit card machines, committing atrocities, having sodomites singing up in the choir, and all other kind of stuff we're doing. I know of a place here in South Florida where it's like near Northwest 21st Avenue, and then you got from Broward Avenue all the way back to 19th Street and going all the way back down up the street, all the way past 31st Avenue. You got about 60, 70 churches in the area, and in some blocks you have 3 churches in one block, and the community look like it does. You don't think that God is going to judge that? Black Lives Matter, we got to learn to work together. We don't want nobody calling us the N-word. We shouldn't be calling each other the N-word. We could never take this nonsense to God and stand before God and try to justify and get God to deal with what the white race is doing to us. They have a part to play in it, but nobody, I don't see a white man holding no gun to nobody, to no gang member head, making him shoot another gang member because of his colors. I don't see no white man going holding a gun to a parent head, telling them not to make your kids study in school. I don't see no white man holding no gun to no pastor's head and telling him to fleece God's people and take his money and ask for this $64 million jet. God don't like evil, period. He don't care what race it is. In fact, if a person has a problem with another person because of their skin color or with race, they can forget about it. How could they be in heaven when God is calling people from every nation, every tongue, every creed, every background, every racial color is going to be represented in the kingdom of God? If you have a problem with another person because he's black or white or they're Spanish or whatever, you got a problem with God. God don't see things as we see it. So I don't like what happened to George Floyd. I don't like what happened to the young lady that got shut up in an apartment in Texas. I don't like what happened to Ahmad. I don't like any of the crime that has happened. And just because somebody do something wrong, it still don't give a police officer the right to take that person's life, regardless. They're the ones with the training. But let's look at this through God's eyes from the other view. How many of those crimes where black men have lost their lives, they placed themselves in that position by doing something they had no business doing? Knowing how these white cops are. Knowing how the system is, you're still going to go out there, ignore the instructions of your mother, and go put your parents in a position where they have to mourn for your life, and your life is taken. And because of our ignorance in doing something we have no business doing, now the whole community is in an uproar. Black lives matter. It matters what happened to us in God's sight, but it also matters on what we do to one another. So do not think for one instant that God is just going to look at what these police officers did and what the white and what this system is doing to us and not look at what we're doing to one another. Because there's nobody holding a gun to our daughter's head and they having babies out of them at a young age. No white man pointed a gun to that person's head and said, stop going to school. No person is putting a gun to your head and saying, go in the corner and sell that crack and them drugs. No person is putting a gun to the person's head and saying, in your own community, the black community, and saying, you know what, go break into that house and rob it. God is a God that's just and fair. And this is what it takes to be a prophet of God. We have to be able to see things through God's eyes. Just how God dealt with that situation in the Garden of Eden, God is going to deal with the situation in America as well. He's not only going to deal with the white people that are in positions of authority that's inflicting problems on blacks and he's going to deal with us for what we're doing on our part to one another. Don't think that we can justify ourselves before God, because we can't. The only thing we can do is cry is, forgive me, God. Have mercy. We don't even support our own businesses. We always looking to get for free from our own. We don't want to pay full price from a young, talented designer or somebody who's opened up a... We don't want to do it. We don't want to take responsibility. And I'm only saying that because that's what it looks like. Because we did, and we truly take responsibility and stop all the yapping, we would be in a better position. Those trillions of dollars that we spend, let's spend it in our own communities. Let's do right by one another. Let's be sincere with one another. Let's help one another without looking to get something out of it. You want to talk about doing things God's way? That's how we do it. So don't think that I'm not upset. My mother, she picked cotton. My aunt suffered in Montgomery, Alabama. Like I said, Rosa Parks is my great aunt. And they and my mother, they suffered in Alabama. But one thing I do know is that we mistreat each other. We do atrocities, and we can never say before God, not one black person, I don't care who we are, not one black American, I don't care who we are, can stand up before God and try to justify nothing. And without condemning what happened to us today in this time without condemning ourselves. Black lives matter to me, but it matters to me more how we are raising our children. And if we make a mistake, look, I messed up. God forgive me, move on, help me to do better, and strive for doing what's best. We still have to get along with other races. Especially if you think about, you talking about you're going to be in heaven, or we're going to be in heaven with God. You're going to have a relationship with God. Because God don't like racism, because racism is heresy. Heresy is division, and they all are a form of witchcraft. Whether a white cop kill a black man or a black man gun down another black man because of the colors he's wearing, it's still shedding the innocent blood and it's still murder. That's what God is going to see. God already knows the circumstances, but what God says, we're not supposed to be shedding, we can't be shedding innocent blood. So sin is sin. Doesn't matter what the reason behind it is. We need to check ourselves. We don't need to let our daughters walk out here wearing tight clothes, looking like dressing in a way that's unbecoming of a woman. Those things, the way a lot of our women dress, and it's not just our, but I'm speaking to our people because we're talking about Black Lives Matter. We got to clean, how can we pull a speck out somebody's eye when we got a beam in our own eye? We got a beam in our own eye. You don't think God is looking at that? I've seen it. I've seen when young black American men lost their lives. Lost their lives from whites in this country in our modern time. Some of those things I looked at, and when I heard it, I'm like, well, what is he doing there? He knows something. Why is he doing that? Why did he put himself in that position? And why did he put his mother in a position where she has to mourn and the community is going to be upset? Why? We put ourselves in a position that we don't need to put ourselves into. Just because we have the right of freedom or we have the right of free speech doesn't mean that we should just speak corrupt speaking out of our mouth. We have to be able to use our words in a powerful way. I understand why the protesters, everybody expresses their anger in a different way. I love black Americans. As a matter of fact, I love all people. I don't care what race you are. I love you. I can't be calling myself or saying I'm a true prophet of God and I'm playing preference to one race over another. I don't do that because God doesn't do that. That's not how God operates, and I'm my Father's son. But I love to see the best from people of my race. I like, and my desire is to see us to achieve the greatness that God put in us to achieve, but we're not functioning in that fashion. I mean, I've seen it. Our children, I've picked my kids up from school, and I've seen it. I've seen it. Kids cussing, running in the streets like they lost their mind. And their parents come up there and just as wild as they are. So don't tell me, because I grew up in the ghetto. I lived in low income area neighborhoods. I live in good income area neighborhood. That's a part of my prophetic walk. So I can God allowed me to see things from all sides. And I can tell you this. We cannot justify ourselves before God. We can speak to the crime that is being committed, but as we're speaking about and as we're pursuing these police officers, we need to police ourselves as well. We need to support our business, our young entrepreneurs. We need to help one another out looking to get something in return. Let God bless you. God will bless you. If you give and help people without looking for return, God knows how to bless, man. God knows how to take care of us. God knows what we need. Charity starts at home, then spreads abroad. How could you say that you love God who you never seen? and you don't even love your brother who you see every day, or the person within your race. You don't even support your own. Come on, we don't even do that, man. Let's be real. And then we have people like on different sports shows like ESPN and others trying to justify how the difference between a black American calling another black American the N-word. I'm not even saying it, I'm just saying the N-word. Because God showed me, no matter who uses the word, it still carries the same meaning. The spirit is in the word. The spirit. I don't know. It's like we done lost our minds. Now this whole country is in an uproar. And did that lady didn't even have to call. That wasn't even necessary. So George Floyd's blood is on her hands too. There's a lot of injustice that's still going on with blacks. But the same way blacks killed each other today, they also did it in slavery time. The house slaves snitching on the field slaves trying to escape. So it's nothing new. Some of our civil rights leaders was killed because of betrayal by our own. Because of envy or whatever else reason. Come on, man. We can't tell God nothing. We need to do a better job at raising our children. Do a better job at how our daughters carry themselves and our sons carry themselves. How many people, as a matter of fact, how many black men in jail are in jail because they didn't honor their mother and their father. They didn't listen to the advice of those who God put in their life. How many of them in jail for that reason alone? How many of them in jail, in prison, because their mother told them not to follow this crowd and they did it anyway? We know how the system is. We know how the crooked people that are of the white race are in high places and government and other areas. We know how crooked the system is. We know that Satan is the prince of the world. We know he's going to use those who don't have, they may call out God, but they don't really believe in God. We know they're going to use him if we really understand what's going on. It's a spiritual thing, man. It's spiritual. How many guys are in prison? We know how the enemy, we know that Satan is the one that's in control of this world system and everything that goes on, and yet and still we play into it. How many of them guys in jail? Because they did something their mother told them not to do. And not all, and I'm not saying a whole, I'm looking at it as God is looking at it as a whole. We always, in every race, you have good and bad. There's white people that really do care about black lives. And there's black people that's really trying to raise their kids that live in low-income neighborhoods that's really trying to give their kids good values. But we've got to look at it how God is looking at it. If we was to try to justify ourselves before God and justify things before God, everybody's going to have to pay a price. You're going to be dealt, blacks are going to be dealt with for our roles and what we're doing in our race, and those who are racist in government and other areas, they use this system to show to inflict racial inequality and injustice and discrimination on black Americans. They're going to suffer. But in our race, we are going to suffer. Just go back and read for yourself. They tried to pass it on. Adam tried to say, no, man, God is Eve, the woman you gave me. Eve said, oh, no, it's the serpent. And God says, okay, Satan, this is what happened to you, serpent. Eve, this is what you're going to suffer. Adam, this is what you're going to suffer for your part in it. And that's how God measures out justice. And he does it through that way throughout the whole scripture. Yeah, we can buy from Gucci. We can support other business, but we need to learn and understand how to support our own artists without looking to get something in return. And don't think I don't understand what it's like, because I grew up in the ghetto. I grew up in the ghetto. Born and raised in the ghetto. And I lived in low income areas. And I lived in decent income areas. I've traveled the world, being in the military. So I don't know everything, but from what I've seen, and God is speaking to me, this is where we stand. This is where we stand, period. This is how I would look at God. So to me, Black Lives Matter. And my first priority as a Black American to make sure that our children and our people are learning and understanding how to respect one another. If we show solidarity and respect for one another, others will respect us too. And then when we go to protest, they will know we are mean business. Because they look, these people take care of one another. I'm not going to comment on the protesters and the different ways people are protesting because everybody expressed their anger. And you know, and in this country, people are fed up. Black Americans are fed up with having this pain inflicted. But we should be equally more fed up with the mess that's going on in our own race, with the pain and the violence and the murder and all other type of evil and sinful action that we inflict upon each other. And with that being said, God bless you and have a wonderful day.